Let's begin with the first question and answer session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. Therefore, we ask that only one question be asked per phone call and that these questions be as brief as possible. You may call the studio directly at the phone or fax number which appear on your screen, including the ITC iPhone number 688-1700. We remind you that you make your phone calls at a distance from the monitor to avoid feedback. Our first question is from Hidalgo, Mexico. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. Buenos días. We were listening to the conference, and it says we have to start with ourselves to be able to face successfully the challenges of globalization. This is an interesting concept, and our question is, have you individually taken time to discover yourself? And this is not exempt of challenges, especially for these new generations that have this type of trans culture. And that is, what different values should we adopt? Our local values and principles or international values and principles?
Okay, so thanks for the question. It's a very good question. I think the first part of your question, did I take some time to discover myself? And I think the answer is yes. Okay, because that is the platform from which you can function. That's the platform which others will see what your value set is. That's how others are either going to be attracted to you or reject what you have to say, etc. So understanding yourself is critically important. And we just came from a 5-day leadership session, actually. But the point of understanding yourself is so that you can be able to relate and function in a transparent way, so that there aren't any sort of hidden parts, okay, so that people can see who you are, number one. Number two, I think as you talk about the challenges of transculture, etc., there are values that are different in each of the cultures around the world, and yet at the core of those, many of those are common. The respect for individuals, et cetera, et cetera. And so from that value set, in terms of the value set that the business applies, the people at the local level, wherever they are around the world, know those well. And so it's looking at both the value set of the culture that I have and the value set of the culture in which I intend to work, and sort of marrying and merging those two. For me, the key is having the conversation around those so that there's clarity of understanding, and then you know how to perform or behave within those cultures successfully.
Great question and great response. Our next question is from Dominican Republic. Go ahead, please.
This is José Ramón Holguín from the Dominican Republic. Human history says that human values have always been synonymous with our ideologies. How can we as cultures be more tolerant in terms of beliefs in different societies around the globe?
Well, that's also a very big question to answer. And thank you for the question. Once again, yes, the cultures are a reflection of the value sets of the organizations and of the cultures. I do think, however, though, that one of the challenges we have is whether or not we're open to learn and understand the value set, if it's quite different from ours, of other cultures, and see that and learn whether or not that contributes to their success, because it must have. It's developed their culture. And so how could we leverage that if we intend to work in those particular areas? So I'm not sure that was a direct answer to your question, but that's how I'd put it in the context of our presentation today.
Great. And our next question is from Mexico. Go ahead, please.
I'm calling from the University Tecnológica of Tecamac. And my question is, how can we develop a true leadership if our human environment is plagued of problems.
Okay.
Big questions.
Big questions today. Yes, this is very good. Thanks. Well, I think what I'm suggesting is that we start, if we're thinking about leadership, we start with ourselves, because it's understanding that we're going to, again, have the foundation in which to interact with others, and from which that we can springboard to connect to others. And using that as a way of looking at the variables that need to be in place for us to be successful. There are a lot of differences going around in the world. There are a lot of different beliefs, or I'll call them positions, actually, more positions than I will call them potentially the values. People are taking positions because they believe it supports a value, whether or not it is one that's constructive for their own society, much less for the societies of the rest of the cultures of the rest of the world. And so that does present a problem and a challenge, but I think it goes back to being one of understanding, openness, and learning, as opposed to putting up a barrier and not even talking about it.
Absolutely. So you start with yourself, and then you learn about other people, other cultures.
Right.
Go from there.
Right.
Okay. Great. I think we don't have any questions. Oh, Panama. Okay, great. We go to Panama for the next question.
Buenos días. Greetings from the University Tecnológica of Panama, and we would also like to greet the participants of our program. If we have a vision that's more intuitive than practical, should we put this in place in days, years, or decades, or what is the time frame to put this in practice?
Okay, well, visions are an image of the future. Visions are something that you currently can't reach. So it's an image of what you would like to become a little further away than you currently are. And you're not sure exactly how you're going to get there. So we use strategies to move us in that direction. But in terms of vision, I would say this, that I think it's important on an annual basis to review the vision. And while it's intuitive, is it intuitive from the organization's perspective, or it is intuitive from the leader's perspective? Because it's the combination of making sure it's a shared vision that is going to make you successful. So whether the intuition was part of the creation of it, the expression of it shouldn't be too intuitive. It ought to be quite clear to engage others.
All right, great. Thank you. I'm not sure. Okay, we're going back to Mexico for our next question.
From the Autonomous University of Chihuahua. The question is very concrete. What is the fundamental aspect that we should put in place when we have people who do not share our common values? And how can we be an authentic leader when dealing with these type of people? Again, greetings from Chihuahua.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I'm not sure that you can be an effective leader if you are not at least cognizant or know your own values. I think the other thing is that if we understand the values of others, they will make the choice of whether or not they're going to follow us. And ultimately, that may lead us to say there are parts, or there may be cultures, or there may be parts of the world, or there may be parts of communities that we choose not to do business in, or we choose not to provide our services because there isn't an alignment. I'm not saying that you put up the barriers where you don't attempt to understand, but if there is a fundamental difference, I think you make a choice around that, particularly in the marketplace.
Excellent. We go to Puebla, Mexico for our next question. Go ahead, please.
My question is, what techniques or strategies do companies use, such as the example that you gave of this young man that did an excellent job, in order to sustain this motivation within the employees? What techniques?
Okay, well, there are multiple for sure, but one I would say is, first of all, having a clear vision and having the values articulated in ways that are very clear, as well as discussions around the values, so that you know what the parameters of behavior are. And if, in fact, we are then behaving consistently and leaders are supporting that, people will start recognizing that they care about us and we care about them. Additionally, I believe that there are multiple things that feed in. So whether or not people are setting goals, whether they're getting feedback in a constructive way. So the conversation sets that are constantly at work within the organization. If there is an issue, it's dealt with immediately and fairly, so people recognize that, oh, that's a boundary, I won't go past that. If I go past it, I see what happens, etc. So it's a lot of basic human relationship skills, okay? So I'd be clear about it, be clear about the values, and communicate.
So it's, again, it starts with understanding your own values,
right,
your own concepts of tolerance, and then moving from there.
Right.
Great. Thank you for your questions. Let us now move to the second module of our program.